The night of April 14, 1912, was unusually calm on the North Atlantic. The sea stretched like a dark mirror, reflecting the stars so perfectly it seemed the ship floated between two heavens. The Titanic, pride of modern engineering and luxury, cut through the silence, her great engines humming steadily. Inside her walls, life went on as if nothing in the world could interrupt the rhythm of music, laughter, and dreams. Yet, far above, the moonless night concealed something dreadful, and the sleeping sun beyond the horizon gave no warning to the souls who trusted the steel beneath their feet. The Titanic had been called unsinkable, a floating palace, a marvel that united the power of man and machine. Its passengers, a mix of the wealthy and the hopeful, carried stories as varied as the stars above them. Some were seeking new lives across the ocean, others carried the weight of privilege and power, while many were simply workers who had built this miracle and now served upon it. In first class, men in fine coats and women in gowns of silk drank champagne under golden chandeliers. They spoke of fortunes, politics, and adventures to come. In second class, there was comfort too, families traveling together, writers and teachers exchanging ideas, middle-class citizens carrying aspirations toward America's promise. Below, in third class, the air was filled with the smell of stew and bread, children laughing, fiddles playing songs of Ireland and Italy, and conversations in languages from every corner of Europe. Hope was alive there, hope that poverty could be left behind across the sea. But as joy, ambition, and love filled the decks, the cold reality of nature drifted quietly in the water ahead. Ice, ancient and indifferent, lay in their path. Somewhere on the horizon, it waited like a silent predator, hidden by the dark sky and calm sea. On the upper deck, couples strolled under the crisp air, pointing at the constellations. Jack, a young man from Ireland in third class, had sneaked up there to breathe fresh air and look at the stars. He thought of the life awaiting him in New York, of the letters he would send to his mother, and of the work he would take to send money home. He did not know that just a few decks above him, Eleanor, a young woman from first class, leaned against the rail with a restless heart. She wore diamonds, but felt them heavy, like chains. Her family was taking her to America for a marriage she did not want. When she looked at the stars, she longed for freedom. Both souls, strangers in different worlds of the same ship, dreamed under the same sky, unaware that fate was about to tie them in tragedy. At 11:40 p.m., the lookout in the crow's nest rang the bell 3 times and shouted, "Iceberg right ahead." The words cut into the night, but too late. The black shape loomed suddenly out of the sea, monstrous and silent. Orders were shouted, the wheel spun, and the ship turned, but the Titanic was too vast, too heavy. The iceberg scraped her side with a sound like thunder muffled beneath water. Steel plates buckled, rivets popped, and the sea rushed in, biting into the ship's belly. At first, few passengers felt anything. A small jolt, a strange vibration, glasses rattling on tables. In the lounges, laughter continued, music played. Many believed it was nothing more than a minor disturbance. But deep below, in the freezing darkness of the lower decks, men working the boilers knew better. Water poured in like a beast unleashed, filling compartment after compartment. They shouted, ran, tried to close watertight doors, but the ship had been dealt a wound it could not survive. Captain Edward Smith stood in his cabin, silent for a moment as the news reached him. His face hardened with the weight of truth. He knew the ship's fate almost immediately. The Titanic was doomed. Still, he walked calmly to the bridge, giving orders, telling his men to stay strong. Wireless operators sent frantic signals across the night, CQD, CQD, SOS. Titanic sinking. Somewhere, help might come, but how long would it take? The passengers began to realize something was wrong. In first class, gentlemen frowned as stewards politely asked them to put on life jackets. Women laughed nervously, refusing to leave their warm cabins for the cold deck. In third class, the confusion was far greater. Many could not understand the English instructions, and locked gates kept them from reaching the upper decks quickly. Fear spread like fire. Mothers clutched their children, men shouted at guards, the air filled with cries in a dozen tongues. On the boat deck, the lifeboats were uncovered, swung out over the icy water. Yet there were not enough. For over 2,000 souls, only a little more than half could be saved if every boat was filled. But they were not. Many officers, fearing panic, ordered lifeboats launched half empty. In the first boats, women in fur coats and men in silk hats sat trembling, staring down at the black water as they were lowered away, hearing the ship's band still playing as if to soothe the night. Jack fought through the crowded stairways, trying to reach the deck. The corridors were tilting now, water sloshing across the floor. He carried a little boy he had found crying alone, his mother lost in the chaos. Eleanor, higher up, was pushed toward a lifeboat by her parents, but she hesitated. She looked back at the ship, at the faces of people who had no chance to be saved, and something inside her rebelled. She could not leave so easily. When her parents were lowered in the lifeboat, she slipped away, running toward the chaos of the third-class deck. There, in the midst of confusion, she found Jack struggling with the child, and in that moment, the walls of class and wealth shattered. She reached out to help him. Their eyes met, both strangers until now, bound together by fear, compassion, and the will to survive. The band played on, violins rising against the screams, the cellist's bow trembling as water crept closer. Some said they played, "Nearer, my God, to thee," others remembered only the melody, haunting and sorrowful, carrying over the waves. It was as if music itself tried to comfort the dying, a final gift before the sea claimed all. The ship's bow sank deeper, the stern rising like a black tower against the stars. People slid across the decks, clinging to railings, screaming prayers. Lifeboats pulled away, some so close to the ship they could see faces leaning over the rails, begging for space. A mother tossed her baby to sailors below, trusting strangers with her child's life. Men kissed their wives goodbye and stepped back, letting them go. Officers shouted, pistols fired into the air to keep order, yet chaos grew. Jack, Eleanor, and the boy reached the upper deck at last. A lifeboat was being lowered nearby, but it was nearly full. Eleanor begged them to take the child. Jack lifted him high, placing him into the hands of a woman who promised to protect him. The boy's cry echoed as the lifeboat descended into the blackness. For Jack and Eleanor, there was no room left. They were trapped among the hundreds still aboard. The minutes became endless. The ship groaned like a dying creature, metal tearing, wood splintering. The stern lifted higher, people clinging to its rails like ants on a falling tree. Some jumped into the sea, their screams cut short by the freezing water. Others held hands, refusing to let go, waiting for the end together. Eleanor clung to Jack's arm as they stood near the rail. She was no longer the wealthy daughter of aristocrats, and he no longer the poor Irish dreamer. They were simply human, fragile and fleeting, holding on as the world collapsed around them. She whispered to him that she was not afraid if he was beside her. He said nothing, only held her tighter, his breath white in the frozen air. At 2:20 a.m., the great ship broke apart. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out. The stern rose, hung for a heartbeat against the sky, then plunged into the Black Sea. A roar filled the night, a sound like mountains crashing into the ocean, and then silence. The lifeboats drifted, their passengers watching in horror. Where once the Titanic had shone like a palace, now only darkness remained, and the cries of hundreds struggling in the freezing water. The sound was unbearable, a chorus of agony carried across the still sea. One by one, the voices faded into silence, swallowed by the cold. Eleanor and Jack were among them, holding onto a piece of wreckage. The icy water bit into their flesh, every breath a battle. The stars above shone indifferently, and beyond the horizon, the sleeping sun was waiting to rise. Jack urged Eleanor to hold on, to keep her eyes open, but her strength was fading. In the darkness, her hand slipped from his, her last breath a sigh on the wind. Jack's voice broke as he called her name, his tears freezing on his face. Soon, even he could not fight the cold any longer. Hours later, the Carpathia arrived, pulling survivors from the sea. Children cried for parents who would never come, women stared blankly at the waves, men sat in silence, broken by loss. Among the survivors was the boy Jack and Eleanor had saved, wrapped in a blanket, too young to understand the sacrifice that had spared him. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the ocean stretched endlessly, calm once more. Where the Titanic had sailed, only fragments remained, scattered across the water like fallen stars. The sun rose at last, golden and indifferent, shining down on a sea of ghosts. The sleeping sun had awakened, but for over 1,500 souls, its light had come too late.